There was a moment in Iruma-kun that first just looks like nothing, but the more you read into it, the more you realise that it changes everything about the story. On the surface, it just looks like another wild scheme that Iruma has been dragged into, but beneath it, it hides some of the craziest lore this series has ever dropped. And if I'm right, this moment doesn't just explain Delkira's disappearance, it also explains that Iruma isn't just some random human. He was in fact created by the former Demon King himself. I know that sounds insane, but let me cook here. It all starts in chapter 408. Iruma gets dragged into Malius's plan to steal the Demon King's key, potentially leading to another world, pulling off a perfect impression of Bachiko whilst Malius does the same with Amory. By the way, can we talk about how busted Iruma's archery is now? He just casually copied the 13 crown like it was nothing. Even Shaki thought this was real and it was undeniably her power. This guy is honestly just a cheat code at this point, and it kind of leads into my entire theory. Because once they get close enough to the Demon King's key, chapter 409 begins with some crazy lore that honestly, like I said, changes everything. The key was discovered in Delkira's headquarters after he vanished. There are tons of theories, maybe a vault, maybe a sealed magical book, maybe nothing at all. But the most believable is that it opens the Great Beyond Gate, the very world where Delkira disappeared to. No one knows what lies beyond except for Delkira himself. But I have an insane theory that breaks everything apart and actually explains how all of it makes sense. Because here's the crazy part. Delkira, he's not actually dead. Well, kind of. The Six Fingers, they never lied to Amdusias, because their intentions are also revealed this chapter. What do I mean? Well, to understand this, we have to first understand Delkira himself. He changed the demon world for the better. He loved this world. So why would he ever leave? Unless he was forced. But you're probably thinking, how? How could the strongest demon to ever live be pushed off the throne? But here's my theory. Baal actually discovered Delkira's secret and threatened to expose it. If the demon world had learned the secret, everything Delkira had built, mostly by force, would collapse. The 13 crowns would split, war would erupt, and even Delkira himself couldn't stop it. So he left, back to his original home, and if you're wondering where that is, you're gonna have to wait and see. But wait, how could Baal force Delkira? I mean, he is strong, but Delkira? He's unstoppable. We're talking about a man who stopped 2 Demon Lord candidates with ease, like it was just some chore he had to do, and completely destroyed the prophecy that the Kingmaker himself, Mephistopheles, had in place. So how could Baal possibly do anything? Well, that's because it wasn't through power, but more because of his identity. The Demon King was in fact human. I know, this sounds insane. How could the Demon King, emphasis on the demon, be human? The clue comes from Sullivan's flashback. Delkira is bleeding onto him, but it looks deliberate. His hand is placed above him. What if Sullivan was actually the one who was seriously injured, and Delkira had to use a massive amount of blood to heal him? The same human blood that Iruma uses later for healing. But I know now you're probably asking, okay, this is Sullivan though. Sullivan is an actual monster. At this point in the series, he's by far the strongest. So who the hell could have hurt him so badly? Well, in chapter 300 we learn that shortly after Delkira's disappearance, Sullivan entered the 13 Crowns' headquarters, covered in scrapes, saying that he asked him to protect the throne whilst he was gone. But we see in this chapter that the moment Delkira walked away, he was fine. He wasn't really injured, but Sullivan had a huge wound on his back, which is why I believe that Delkira and Sullivan actually had a huge fight, with Delkira winning easily but ending up using his blood to heal Sullivan before he left, meaning that Sullivan basically attacked his own master and the Demon King. This is why he returns to the 13 Crowns with no wounds, but scrapes all over his clothing. His wounds were healed, and it also plays into the fact that Sullivan didn't really tell them much about what happened. Delkira probably did tell Sullivan to protect the throne whilst he was gone, but this was a final goodbye, and Sullivan has been in denial ever since. Sullivan was also likely told to find a replacement king, but at the time thought the same thing as Amdusias, that Delkira could never be replaced, explaining his depressed look even more. Obviously, obviously this doesn't entirely prove that Delkira is human, but to be fair, I don't believe that he's completely human, more of a half-breed hybrid, which I'll go into more later. Yes, I did in fact say in another video that this gate isn't probably to Earth, and okay, I was wrong, I take it back. Opinions can change. Because after this chapter, it just explains way too much. And it also explains where our main protagonist, Iruma, even came from. How? Well, hundreds of years ago, Delkira vanished from the demon world. That's why I believe Iruma is a descendant of his. Yeah, I know it's a really popular theory, but honestly, it never really had any substance to me outside of them kind of looking similar in certain panels. Because I hear a lot of people saying that he's Iruma's father, but let's be honest, that's definitely not the case. Look at his real parents. They look exactly like him. The chances of Delkira being his father or something like that, it seems very unlikely to me. But he could be a descendant. I mean, like I said, they look incredibly similar outside of Delkira being enormous, making me believe again that he's not entirely human, because what human is out here looking like this? And unlike Iruma, he did seem to possess his own mana. I mean, his mana literally has its own special crest when Iruma uses it later. And Iruma's parents, they were, well, the West. So the chances that Delkira is a close relative of Iruma is quite low, but the chances are there that Delkira once had children a long time ago whilst on Earth with a human woman, and after hundreds of years, obviously that blood had diluted, and Iruma barely had any of it, so he was born without mana. But this could tie into the fact that Iruma does have a borderline bloodline magic in his dodging ability. Delkira also left a message for Sullivan before he left, giving him some sort of message to find the next Demon King, which is in fact our boy. And I do really like the idea that Sullivan has become a grandpa to Iruma, and he's almost replaced Delkira, who was actually Iruma's relative. Iruma was born without mana, so he couldn't become the Demon King. So what if Delkira had his own plan? The Golden Ring of Solomon, which he transformed into the Gluttonous Feeder Ring with his mana, having the ability to grant demons, or even humans, his own magic. We know this is possible. Kiryu literally stockpiles mana himself, but unlike Iruma, there is a major difference here. Leading on to the next part of my theory, that Delkira, or Delkira, is in fact Alicrad. Iruma's ring isn't just a trinket, it absorbs mana to eventually return to its true form. Now again, I know this is another popular theory, but I have found the proof I need that convinces me at least, and you guys are gonna have to let me know in the comments if you also agree, and you can join my Discord to discuss further. I doubt Ali had memories of who he was, or in fact, the memories within his own mana, until recently. You guys remember in Demon Slayer where Kibutsuji Muzan's blood has memories of Yoriichi in it? What if the mana within Alicrad is the same, but he can only access all of these memories if he gains more and more mana? That explains why at first he didn't really have a body, he was just a black mist. Making Iruma ranking up so quickly make perfect sense, because Ali evolves the more Iruma ranks up, and only a rank 10 demon can ascend the throne. The Gluttonous Feeder Ring is also decently well known, as Iruma found it in the library, but the fact that no one knew what it was at the time other than Sullivan is kinda confusing to me. And no one has ever said that the Gluttonous Feeder Ring looks anything like the Golden Ring of Solomon, and Sullivan also said that it's never spoke in history before. So yeah, I believe that Delkira created this ring himself. I mean, look at his hands, there's a lot of theories about his rings specifically, meaning that he's definitely knowledgeable about them. So I think it was the Golden Ring of Solomon which he purposely transformed. Sullivan was likely never told everything about Delkira's plan, especially the parts where he put his own mana and consciousness into the ring, which explains why he's so confused when Iruma brings it up. And it's not a coincidence that in the Demon King's prophecy, they mentioned the Golden Ring of Solomon being worn by the next Demon King. He told them about this specific prophecy even before the story began, so yeah, I'm saying that Delkira has future sight. Listen, he was the Demon King, he probably had every type of magic you could ever imagine, okay? Seriously though, this does explain Ali-san's recent weird behaviour and the fact that he doesn't really appear as much as he used to. He probably always had some idea who he was, that's how he was able to tell Iruma that he was Alicrad, which is obviously Delkira backwards. If you guys didn't know, if you say Delkira, that's fine. I say that a lot. But in the Japanese translation, they don't really have the letter L, I believe. Yeah, it doesn't have the letter L, and basically R and L are kind of interchangeable. So Delkira and Delkira are basically the same thing, but Delkira, even though I say Delkira, probably makes more sense, because what's Alicrad backwards? it's Delkira. That can't be a coincidence. But yeah, it does explain how recently, because Iruma's getting a lot more strong and ranking up very quickly, these memories are starting to come back more and more. And he's looking over Iruma now, and hearing about the Demon King's key, it reminded him even more that he's coming to the end of his journey with Iruma. Which leads me to my theory that I've been saying for a while, that Ali-san will eventually disappear completely and vanish inside of Iruma, allowing him to completely possess Delkira's mana. The fact that Lead only saw a smoke whilst Iruma literally saw Delkira says a lot, and the black mist seems very familiar to when Ali-san first appeared, but obviously way larger. The reason Iruma saw him and Lead didn't is again because he's the one who possesses his mana and DNA. All the hints showing Iruma's similarity to Delkira make sense now. He's a descendant and his mana comes from Ali-san, and Ali-san is the crucial part of Baal's plan. He wants to use this ring to, and hear me out here, resurrect Delkira inside of Iruma's body. Okay. Again, let me cook. Trust me, there's a reason I think this. We've seen him experimenting and turning demons into unheard of creatures, and who's to say he can't turn Iruma into Delkira as long as he has his mana, and even his consciousness, which is beginning to wake up inside of the ring. That's why Delkira is technically still alive. He's just been reincarnated inside Ali-san's ring, which only works because Iruma carries Delkira's DNA. The ring has to choose its owner, almost like One for All users in My Hero Academia. Ali-san wouldn't have awakened otherwise. This ring would literally be useless, because Delkira designed it for a descendant. It sent the Demon King's blood within Iruma. Delkira was already making the next Demon King, which again explains why Baal made clear that Delkira stated that Sullivan could never be the Demon King, because he already had his plans to make his own, which makes total sense for his personality. He was very selfish and always did his own thing. What anyone else said. Delkira was a man who seemingly always had a plan. Iruma is that plan for him. Sullivan states how they're nothing like each other, but frequently sees his face flickering behind his. All of this explains Iruma's insanely fast ranking up too, since the ring needs to reach its final form as soon as possible. Now, this theory might be completely batshit, but honestly, this makes a lot of sense to me. And if you guys have any similar theories or even added on to my theory, then like I said, make sure to comment down below and subscribe for more Iruma content and content in general, since Iruma isn't the only thing I do. And of course, join my Discord. We have a lot of discussions there, even if some of them are really interesting and had me crying with laughter recently. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.